She called me trash. My brother believed her. And for 9 years, I lived with the ache of being cut off by the only family I thought I had left. But what Daniela didn't know, the wife who poisoned Ethan against me, was that every insult, every slammed door, every year of silence became fuel. This is how the sister-in-law who called me worthless ended up eating her words while I signed the papers to buy the very house she bragged about for years. If you've ever been underestimated, abandoned, or written off by people who were supposed to stand by you, then you know exactly how this feels. Hit that like button, subscribe, and buckle up. Because this one ends with the kind of revenge you dream about when you're lying awake at 3 a.m. replaying every cruel word they ever said. My name is Daisy, and if you'd told me 10 years ago that my brother, the boy who once held my hand when I was scared of thunder, would cut me out of his life for nearly a decade, I would have laughed. Ethan wasn't just my brother. He was my protector, my best friend, my safe place in a world that often felt too sharp. Growing up, our parents worked long hours, and a lot of the time it felt like it was just the two of us navigating the world. Ethan would slip extra cookies onto my plate when Mom was on one of her health kicks. He taught me how to climb the tree in our backyard, boosting me up when I couldn't quite reach. And when kids at school teased me for being too quiet, too nerdy, Ethan was there, standing taller than he really was, telling them to back off. He wasn't perfect, but he was mine, and I trusted him in a way I never trusted anyone else. That trust started to crack the night he brought Daniela home. I remember the moment like it's burned into me. Ethan had been dating her for a few months, but this was the first time he wanted me to meet her. I was excited. Actually, I wanted to see the woman who made my brother light up every time his phone buzzed. I wanted to like her because she made him happy. When Daniela walked in, it felt like the air in the room shifted. She was gorgeous, yes, but not in a warm way. It was the kind of beauty that made you instantly self-conscious, like you'd suddenly stepped under a spotlight. Her perfume was heavy, almost suffocating, and the way she looked at me, it wasn't curiosity or kindness. It was assessment. Judgment. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. So, this is Daisy. Something in her tone made me feel like I'd already failed a test I didn't know I was taking. I tried anyway. I asked her about her job, about her family. She gave me clipped answers, as if each question was beneath her. She shifted conversations back to herself, back to the expensive vacations she'd taken or the brand of her handbag, dangling it just so on the chair for maximum visibility. At dinner, I reached for the salad bowl, and she leaned toward Ethan with a soft laugh. Oh my God, she actually eats carbs? That's a brave. The table went quiet. My cheeks burned. Ethan chuckled awkwardly, like he didn't know what else to do. And in that silence, something shifted. A tiny fissure in the bond between us. It didn't stop there. Every interaction with Daniela chipped at me in small, cutting ways. She'd whisper things just loud enough for me to hear. Why does she dress like that? It's embarrassing. Or, Ethan, you shouldn't have to take care of her. She's dragging you down. At first, Ethan defended me. I saw him roll his eyes at her comments, squeeze my hand under the table when her words stung. But slowly, he started to change. Calls from him became shorter, then less frequent, then non-existent. When I reached out, he'd answer with, "I'm busy, Daisy. I'll call you later." Later never came. And then came the message that gutted me. It was a gray Tuesday afternoon. I was at work, typing up a report, when my phone buzzed. Ethan's name lit up the screen, and for a second, hope fluttered in me like it always did. I thought maybe he wanted to grab dinner, maybe he missed me. But the words froze my veins. Daisy, maybe it's best if we take some space. Daniela feels uncomfortable with how close we are. She thinks it's unhealthy. Don't contact us for a while. My hands trembled. My throat closed. I read it over and over, each time hoping I'd misunderstood. But the meaning never changed. My brother, the boy who promised to always have my back, was choosing her over me. I sent reply after reply. Ethan, please. I don't understand. Can we talk about this? I love you. Please don't do this. No response. That wall turned into weeks, then months, and eventually years. 9 long years. 9 birthdays without a call. 9 Christmases where I stared at my phone, willing it to light up. 9 years of watching from a distance as their lives bloomed without me. Vacations to Greece, anniversary photos in matching outfits, a shiny new house with a front porch I'd never sit on. I cried so many nights I lost count. Sometimes silently into my pillow, sometimes loud, raw sobs that left me shaking. The question repeated in my head like a cruel mantra. What did I do to deserve this? Why wasn't I enough? But grief has a way of transforming. At first, it hollowed me out. Then it hardened me. Slowly, I realized, if they saw me as trash, I'd show them what trash could build. I buried myself in work. I studied late into the night, picking up skills I didn't know I had the grit for. When promotions were denied, I didn't crumble. I learned, adapted, and came back sharper. Every rejection became fuel. Every memory of Ethan's silence became a reason to push harder. I stopped waiting for him to call. I stopped begging for answers that would never come. Instead, I whispered to myself, fine. If I'm nothing to you, I'll become someone the world can't ignore. What started as a survival instinct grew into something bigger. I climbed the ladder at my company, then built connections, then took the terrifying leap into starting my own. Sleepless nights, endless failures, scraping by with just enough to pay rent, but little by little I grew. My tiny startup began to take shape. Clients came. Investors followed. And suddenly, I wasn't the girl crying over her brother's betrayal anymore. I was becoming Daisy, the CEO. And though I hadn't seen Ethan or Daniela in nearly a decade, their words never left me. She's trash. She'll never be anything. Every success became a silent reply. Every deal closed was another nail in the coffin of their judgment. And though I pretended otherwise, deep down, I dreamed of the day they'd have to see me, not as the broken sister they discarded, but as the woman they could never have imagined. That day was closer than I thought. When I say I started from nothing, I mean it. After Ethan cut me off, I was living paycheck to paycheck, in a cramped studio apartment with peeling paint and neighbors who blasted music until 2 a.m. My only luxury was a secondhand laptop that overheated so badly I had to balance it on a stack of books with a fan blowing underneath. But that laptop was my lifeline. I taught myself coding at night after my shifts. I devoured online courses, tutorials, anything free I could find. I didn't just want to survive anymore. I wanted to prove myself, to carve a space in the world where no one could ever call me trash again. The first app one built was clunky, but it solved a problem. A small business owner I knew needed a way to manage her client bookings without drowning in paper notes. I made her a simple scheduling system. She loved it. She told her friend. Word spread. Soon I had 3 clients. Then 6. Then 10. I was still broke, still eating instant noodles most nights, but for the first time, I felt a spark of possibility. When my boss at the office mocked me, saying my little side project was a distraction, I quit. I left with nothing but a shaky plan and a dream that sounded insane to everyone else. The years that followed were brutal. Investors turned me down over and over. One laughed and said, "Come back when you've got someone credible on your team." Another told me, "People like you burn out fast. You don't have what it takes." Those words stung, but instead of crushing me, they reminded me of Daniela. Her smug smile, her whisper to Ethan, "She's worthless." I carried those words like stones in my pocket, heavy, but grounding. They kept me focused. I worked 18-hour days, slept on my office floor, showered at a nearby gym because I couldn't afford hot water at home. My friends thought I'd lost it. But little by little, things shifted. My product improved. Clients grew loyal. And then one investor, a woman who had been overlooked in her own career, saw something in me. She gave me the funding I needed to scale. That's when the world started to take me seriously. 5 years into the grind, my company wasn't just surviving. It was thriving. We were closing 6-figure deals, hiring staff, expanding offices. The girl who once begged her brother not to abandon her was gone. In her place was Daisy Morgan, CEO. And then, like fate had been waiting for the right moment, Ethan and Daniela's names reappeared in my life. It started small. A mutual connection tagged us both in a post on LinkedIn. I froze when I saw his face. Older, sharper, with a suit that screamed success. Daniela stood beside him in the photo, smiling like she owned the world. I clicked, even though I knew I shouldn't. They were celebrating the purchase of a new property, a sleek modern house in the wealthiest part of town. The caption read, "Finally found our dream home. Hard work pays off." My chest tightened. For a moment, I was that broken girl again, staring at pictures of the life I was excluded from. But then another feeling surged, something colder, sharper. I whispered to myself, not for long. The real twist came a year later. I was walking into a high-stakes meeting with a potential corporate client, one that could catapult my company into an entirely new league. I pushed open the boardroom doors, heart pounding with nerves, and there he was. Ethan, my brother, sitting at the table, representing the client's finance team. For a moment, time stopped. My throat went dry. Memories slammed into me. The message that cut me off, the birthdays without calls, the nights I cried into my pillow. His eyes widened when he saw me. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. Daniela wasn't there, but her shadow was. I could almost hear her voice dripping venom. "She's trash." I straightened my shoulders. I was no longer the girl begging for scraps of his attention. I was the CEO, and this was my boardroom now. The meeting went on, every word loaded with tension. Ethan tried to keep his composure, but I caught the flicker of disbelief in his eyes when I presented my proposal, confident and commanding. He was seeing me for the first time, not as his little sister, but as someone powerful. After the meeting, he lingered. "Daisy," he said softly, almost like he used to. "It's been a long time. 9 years." I wanted to spit the words. 9 years since you threw me away. But instead, I gave him a polite, professional smile. "Yes, it has." And I walked away. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I didn't need to check who it was, I knew. "Daisy, I'm sorry. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. The apology I had begged for all those years ago. The words that could have saved me from so much pain. And yet, it felt hollow now. Too little. Too late. I didn't reply. Instead, I poured my energy into growing the company even further. Success became my shield. Every headline, every award, every milestone was another layer of armor against the scars he left behind. But life has a wicked sense of irony. One of the biggest deals my company ever pursued involved a property development firm. We'd been circling each other for months, negotiating terms, hashing out details. And then, during one of the site visits, the realtor casually mentioned the crown jewel of the project, the luxury house recently put up for sale by a couple facing financial strain. When she gave me the address, I felt my stomach flip. I knew that street. I knew that house. It was Ethan and Daniela's dream home, the one they'd bragged about on social media, the one they'd held up as proof that they had won in life. Now it was on the market, and Ayami, the sister they called trash, was in a position to buy it outright. I remember standing outside the gates that night, staring up at the glowing windows. The house looked perfect from the outside, but I knew better. I knew what it represented: arrogance, cruelty, betrayal. For the first time in 9 years, I smiled, not out of bitterness, but with the thrill of justice clicking into place. This wasn't just business anymore. This was fate handing me the ultimate chance for revenge. When I first stood outside Ethan and Daniela's so-called dream house, I thought my knees might give out. Not from weakness. No, from the sheer power of the moment. I had spent years building myself back from the ground up, brick by brick, night by night. And here it was, the perfect symbol of everything they had stolen from me, about to fall into my hands. But revenge. Revenge isn't something you rush. It's something you savor. I could have called the realtor the next morning and slapped down a payment. But no, that would have been too easy. Too clean. I wanted them to feel it. I wanted them to taste the irony of their lives unraveling at the hands of the very person they'd branded as worthless. So I did what I do best. I planned. First, I confirmed the rumors. The realtor let it slip over coffee. "They overextended," she said, shaking her head. "Took on too much debt trying to keep up with appearances. The wife, especially, always wanted the finer things. It's sad, really. They're desperate to sell. Desperate. The word was music to my ears. Daniela, who once sneered at my thrift store cardigans, who called me trash behind manicured hands, desperate. Ethan, who turned his back on me because she told him to, desperate. I couldn't stop smiling all the way home. I began the process quietly. My company had a property division by now, thanks to our rapid expansion, so putting in an offer under one of our shell LLCs was easy. No way would Ethan or Daniela see my name until the very last second. But as the paperwork moved forward, I found myself lying awake at night, thinking back to those years of silence. 9 years of holidays alone. 9 years of scrolling through photos of their smiling faces while I ate ramen in my shoebox apartment. My anger wasn't gone. It had just matured. It was no longer the wild, flailing fury of a broken little sister. It was precise, focused. And when the closing day came, I walked into the attorney's office with my chin high, signing every page with a steady hand. That house was mine now, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. The first step of my plan was simple: let them see. I waited a week, then drove up to the house in broad daylight, parking my sleek black car right in the driveway. I walked up the path in a tailored suit, heels clicking on the stone. And there they were, Ethan and Daniela, standing with the moving crew, boxing up what little pride they had left. Daniela's face when she saw me, priceless. Her jaw dropped, eyes wide like she was staring at a ghost. Ethan froze, his hands tightening on the box he was holding. Daisy. His voice cracked. I gave them a polite smile, all professional warmth. Oh, hello. Don't mind me. Just checking on the property. I like to make sure my investments are in good condition. Daniela blinked. You're what? I held up the keys and let them jingle, slow and deliberate. My house. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Ethan's face went pale. Daniela sputtered. This isn't possible. You don't have. Oh, but I do. I interrupted, my tone calm, almost kind. 9 years ago, you told Ethan I was trash. That I'd never be anything. Remember? Her cheeks flushed a deep crimson. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only they could hear. Turns out, trash can be recycled into something valuable. Ethan flinched like I'd slapped him. That was only the beginning. I didn't just take the house. I made sure they had to watch me enjoy it. Every week, I hosted small networking events there. Cars lined the street, champagne glasses clinked, laughter spilled out of the very walls they once called home. My company's logo went up on banners draped across the front lawn for charity galas. The house became a symbol of my success and their humiliation. Daniela tried to avoid me at first, but the whispers in town spread fast. People talked about how the golden couple had lost their dream house, about how Ethan's sister, the one he'd cut off, now lived there like royalty. The image they had built, the perfect facade of their lives, began to crumble. And I was there to watch every crack appear. But here's the thing about revenge. It's not just about humiliation. It's about justice. I didn't just want them embarrassed. I wanted them to understand the pain they'd caused me. To feel in their bones what it was like to be discarded, unwanted, powerless. So I waited. Because I knew people like Daniela can't stay quiet for long. And sure enough, a few weeks later, my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. Can we talk? Please. We need help. I stared at it, my fingers hovering over the screen. Help. After 9 years of silence, after every cruel word, after every ignored birthday, they wanted my help. The irony was delicious. I didn't reply right away. No. I let them stew in it. I made them wait, the same way I had waited by the phone all those years. Only after days of silence did I finally send back a simple reply. Meet me at the house. Tomorrow. 7 p.m. When they arrived, Daniela's polished facade was cracked. Her hair wasn't perfectly styled. Her clothes looked cheaper than before. Ethan looked exhausted, his shoulders hunched. I welcomed them in with a smile, like a hostess greeting unwanted guests. Wine. I offered sweetly, pouring myself a glass without waiting for their answer. Daniela clenched her jaw. You You can't just rub this in our faces. This is cruel. I laughed, low and cold. Cruel? Daniela, you told my brother I was trash. And he believed you. He cut me off for 9 years. Do you know how many nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering why I wasn't enough? Do you have any idea what that does to someone? She looked away, her lips pressed tight. Ethan finally spoke, his voice breaking. Daisy, I made a mistake. I should have never let her say those things. I should have stood by you. For a moment, I almost felt the old ache. The little sister in me wanted to believe him. But then I remembered the birthdays alone. The holidays with empty chairs. The messages unanswered. You're right, I said simply. You should have. I let the silence hang, heavy and suffocating. Then I leaned back in my chair, sipping my wine. But don't worry. I'll let you experience what it feels like to be powerless. To need help and know it's just out of reach. Their faces fell. And in that moment, I knew. I had only just begun. When Ethan and Daniela walked out of my house that night, I could feel their humiliation clinging to the air like smoke. But that was only the beginning. Their fall was about to get so much steeper. I had everything I needed to dismantle them. Not just wealth, but influence. And in the world Ethan and Daniela cared most about, reputation was everything. For years, they had cultivated the image of the perfect power couple. Photos of charity galas, vacation selfies with captions like, "Hard work pays off," and their shiny dream home showcased to anyone who would look. People believed they had it all. But now, the truth was mine to reveal, piece by piece. The first step was simple: exposure. I began hosting charity events at the house. My company sponsored them, which meant media coverage was guaranteed. When journalists asked how I had come to own such a stunning property, I smiled sweetly and told the truth. Oh, I bought it from my brother and his wife when they fell into financial trouble. The story spread like wildfire. Headlines appeared online. CEO buys brother's dream home after family rift. From estranged sister to powerhouse businesswoman. I didn't have to embellish. The facts alone were enough. And every time someone brought it up, Daniela's face flushed redder. I'd see her at events sometimes, still clinging to her designer handbags, but the sparkle was gone. People whispered when she passed. About how the woman who once sneered at me had lost everything to the sister she'd called trash. But I wasn't done. A few months later, Ethan reached out again. This time he asked for a job. My brother, my protector, my betrayer, reduced to begging me for a chance. I read his email 3 times, savoring every word. I know things ended badly between us, but I'm struggling. I have experience in finance. If there's anything at your company. I sat back in my chair and laughed. Out loud. The same brother who cut me off because his wife said I was a burden now wanted me to save him. I invited him in for an interview. When he arrived at my office, he looked older, wearier. His suit was worn at the edges, his tie slightly crooked. Gone was the polished image of success he'd flaunted for years. Daisy, he said, forcing a smile. Thank you for seeing me. I gestured for him to sit. My office was sleek, glass walls and towering windows, everything he used to brag about having. Tell me, I said, leaning forward. Why do you want to work here? He hesitated. Because I need a fresh start. I want to rebuild. And I know you're successful. I thought maybe I'd save you? I finished, my tone sharp. His eyes dropped. I let the silence stretch before I leaned back in my chair. Ethan, do you remember when I begged you not to cut me off? Do you remember the birthdays you ignored? The holidays you skipped? The messages you never replied to? He swallowed hard. I was wrong. You were, I agreed. And now you're here asking me for help. He nodded, shame flickering in his eyes. I stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city I now controlled. Ethan, I built this empire without you. I survived 9 years of silence, of loneliness, because you decided I wasn't worth fighting for. And now you want me to welcome you back. He shifted in his chair. I don't expect you to forget. You're right, I cut in, turning sharply. I'll never forget. I paused, letting my words sink in. But I will give you something. His eyes lifted, hopeful. A lesson. I let him sit there waiting before I added. No, Ethan. You don't get to be part of this. Not now, not ever. You made your choice. Live with it. His shoulders slumped. For the first time, I saw him not as my brother, but as just another man who had underestimated me. He left that day with nothing. And I felt lighter. Daniela's downfall was more public. She had built her entire identity on status, on being the wife who won by marrying into success. But now, without Ethan's job and without their house, she scrambled to maintain her image. She still posted photos online, carefully curated to suggest wealth, but the cracks showed. The designer dresses were outdated. The vacations were clearly staged. People noticed. At one gala, she tried to approach me. "Daisy," she said, her voice trembling under its fake sweetness. "Can we talk?" I smiled, but it wasn't kind. "Of course. But let's keep it short. I have investors waiting." Her jaw tightened. "You don't have to do this. You don't have to rub it in." I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "Do you know how many nights I cried because of you? Because you told Ethan I was trash? Do you know how it feels to be erased from your own family?" She looked away, shame flickering in her eyes for the first time. I straightened, my tone cool. "This isn't me rubbing it in, Daniela. This is me showing you that every cruel word had consequences. You built your empire on tearing me down. Now you get to live in the ruins." I walked away before she could reply. Over the next year, their lives unraveled completely. The house was gone, their savings drained, their reputation shredded. Ethan couldn't find stable work. No one wanted a man with his record of mismanagement. Daniela bounced between failed ventures, each one collapsing faster than the last. And me? I thrived. My company soared to new heights, expanding internationally. The house that once symbolized their success became the jewel of my empire. I filled it with light, laughter, and people who respected me. Every time I walked through those doors, I remembered the girl who had once cried herself to sleep, begging for her brother's love. And I smiled, knowing that girl had become a woman who didn't need their validation anymore. But the sweetest moment came one evening at a fundraiser held in my grand living room. Guests mingled with champagne glasses, music drifted softly, and I stood at the center, delivering a speech about resilience and growth. As I spoke, I caught sight of Ethan and Daniela outside the gates, watching from the sidewalk. They hadn't been invited, of course, but they couldn't stay away. Our eyes met across the distance. And in that moment, I knew they finally understood. They had thrown me away, but I had risen higher than they ever dreamed. And now they were the ones left outside, looking in. The night I truly closed the chapter on Ethan and Daniela wasn't at a gala, or a boardroom, or even in the house I took from them. It was on an ordinary Tuesday evening. I had just returned from a business trip overseas, exhausted but buzzing from success. We had closed a multi-million-dollar deal that would change the future of my company forever. My phone buzzed with yet another message from Ethan. This time he wasn't asking for a job or money. He was begging. "Daisy, please. Daniela and I are struggling. We don't know where else to turn. You've built so much and we have nothing. We're sorry. Can we meet?" 9 years of silence, followed by months of desperation. And now this. For a moment, I almost felt that old ache again. The longing for my brother, for the boy who once swore he'd always protect me. But then I remembered the silence. The birthdays alone. The way he had chosen her voice over mine. I typed back one word. No. It was the most liberating thing I had ever written. That weekend, I hosted another charity event at their former house. The chandeliers sparkled, laughter and music filled every corner, and my guests toasted to the company I had built. As I stood there, glass in hand, I caught sight of myself reflected in the tall windows. Not the broken girl Ethan and Daniela had abandoned, but the woman who had turned pain into power. The best revenge wasn't just that I bought their house, or that I crushed the image they had built for themselves. It was that I no longer needed them. Their approval, their presence, their love. It didn't define me anymore. I had defined myself. And when people whispered about me now, it wasn't trash or burden. It was CEO, visionary, success story. That was the sweetest revenge of all. As the night wound down, one of my closest friends raised her glass and said, "To Daisy, the proof that the best way to get even is to win bigger than they ever dreamed." The room erupted in cheers. And for the first time in years, I felt something I never thought I would again: peace. Ethan and Daniela had written me out of their story, but I had written my own. And it was so much better. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. But here's the truth: their betrayal doesn't define you. What you do with the pain does. I turned mine into power, and in the end, that was the greatest revenge. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and tell me in the comments, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever witnessed? And don't forget to subscribe, because more stories like this one are coming, and trust me, you won't want to miss them.